everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Arlene August for those of you who don't know me. If it is your first time here, welcome. Today we are doing a Bible study. It has been about a month since I last posted on my channel. March was a crazy month. It was my husband Darren's 40th birthday. So yeah, we spent the month pretty much celebrating him. But today I am back with a Bible study and I'm very excited to share with you what I have been studying, what I have been learning, and yeah, today we are in the book of Genesis again, and we are with Joseph. His story, Joseph is the dreamer. Many of us know Joseph as the dreamer, and his story is very interesting, very inspiring, and I don't even know how I landed up at Joseph's story, but I found myself recently in a place where I was very offendable, if that's even a word. I found myself feeling very offended by a lot of things, a lot of people, things that were done, things that were said, and one day Darren called me out and was just like, stop being so offendable, stop being so sensitive, you know? And I thought I would read up about it and study a bit about offense. What does the Bible say about offense? What does Jesus say about offense, and how should we handle it when we do get offended, when offense does come our way? And I felt very drawn to the story of Joseph. Joseph's story is, Darren loves Joseph's story because Darren is a big dreamer as well, and he's very inspired by Joseph. But Joseph was Jacob's youngest, one of his youngest sons. And I love the story of Jacob. If you have been on my channel and watched a few of our Bible studies, Jacob is one of my, if not the favorite person in the Bible. And Joseph was Jacob's son, and he loved Joseph very, very much. Joseph had found great favor with his father from a very young age, and one of the things that I noticed reading the story of Joseph was that he was righteous from a very young age. He lived his life right. You know, if he saw something that was wrong, he reported it to his father, he reported to whoever he was working for. So he started having dreams at a very young age and shared with his brothers what his dreams were. And his brothers were already, he wasn't in a great position with his brothers because his brothers were jealous of the relationship that he had with his dad. And he had great favor with his dad, and his brothers didn't like that. And on top of that, he had these dreams that were kind of saying and pointing towards or alluding to the fact that they may bow down to him, as Joseph and his brothers didn't like that. So they had plotted to kill him, but one of his brothers had advocated for him and said, let's not kill him, let's rather sell him into slavery. And they sold him into slavery. He was bought by someone that worked in the palace, and you know, wherever he was, he found great favor with people. Even though he was young, he excelled in everything that he did. He found himself in really high positions. And that was one of the lessons that I learned from Joseph, was that his youth, even though he was young, he was able to excel. So his age wasn't something that held him back. Also, people that didn't really know him and didn't have a relationship with him were the people that were able to see the potential and the gifting that he had. But the Bible tells us that Joseph was pretty good looking. It says he was a young, well-built, handsome man, and because of that, Pharaoh's wife really took a liking to him and kept trying to tempt him to sleep with her. But because he was righteous, he didn't want to, and he didn't. So because she was upset by his rejection, she had framed him for rape. And this is the second lot of trauma and hurt that Joseph is facing in his very young life. First, he is sold by his family, his brothers, half brothers, and full brother, sell him off into slavery. And now he's been falsely accused of rape. He is facing a lot of trauma. These are hectic things happening to him in his life as a young man. But he's able to overcome them. He goes to jail, and even in the prison, even in jail, he is able to excel and is able to do well at what he is given to do. And one of the wardens trusts him, and he is the one that ends up looking after the prisoners. But it comes out that Joeseph has the gift to interpret dreams, and he ends up interpreting dreams for these two in the prison, and a few years later interprets dreams for the Pharaoh once again. And that is the thing and the gift that basically springboards him into his breakthrough and into what he is called and purposed to do by God. And I mean, you can go back and read the story of Joeseph. It's a lengthy story. This is just a condensed version of it. But he finds himself in a place where he is the only person that is second to Pharaoh. He has all this authority, and Egypt is faced with 7 years of abundance and then 7 years of famine. And also the surrounding areas were faced with this famine. And all these years later, even though he has been, he's been blessed, he's come out of the prison, he has this high position in the palace. It goes on to say that he also gets married and has kids. All these years later, his brothers end up coming to him and asking him for food, because where they are from, there's no food. They weren't able to store up the food the way that they were. And they aren't able to recognize him, but he recognizes them immediately. And a whole lot of things happen, and eventually he reveals himself to his brothers and say, "It's me, it's Joeseph. I'm the one that you sold into slavery, but it wasn't for nothing, because this was the plan and purpose that God had for us, so that I could be here, so that you wouldn't starve and die, so that I could give you food." And that was a massive lesson for me, because coming from the background that I do and my family that I come from, I found myself in a place where I felt very rejected by my family and very alone, and I really could relate to that. I was like, this is not easy. This is not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to just say, this was God's plan. It's okay, I accept you, I embrace you. One of the lessons that I learned from Joseph's story is that life goes on. Life goes on after trauma, life goes on after anger and hurt. And you do need to go on with life. You do need to roll with the punches and move forward towards your healing, move forward towards your purpose in spite of what has been done to you. The other thing that I learned was that it is okay to be angry and hurt and cry because of what has been done for you. In Genesis, there's a couple of times that Joeseph cries and is hurt. In one of the scriptures, it says that he broke down and wept so loud that the Egyptians in the other room actually heard him crying. And that is in Genesis 45, verse 2. I'll start at verse 1. It says, "Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, 'Out, all of you.' So he was alone with his brothers, and he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians could hear him. Word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. He cried a few times. He wept so hard. There was times when he had to run out of the room to cry because he was so overcome by emotion, seeing his brothers again. I can't imagine what it would be like to see the people that plotted to kill you, that are your family, and the people that sold you into slavery. It couldn't be easy, but at the end of the day, he still loved them, and he still embraced them as much as he tried to hide from them. The biggest lesson that I take from the story of Joeseph is that amidst of his offense and his anger and his hurt, which is healthy, which is normal to feel that way because, geez, he went through a lot because of his brothers. In the midst of that, he was able to recognize the God in his situation. He was able to recognize that everything happened because this was the plan that God had for them. This was the plan that God had for their family and for him. And it takes someone really mature and really big to recognize that, but he was able to recognize that. He says, after he revealed himself, please come closer, he said to them. So they came closer, and he said again, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset and don't be angry for yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive, and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you, and he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace and the governor of all Egypt. That is amazing that he was able to see his purpose through that hardship, through the false accusation of rape and spending, I mean, it doesn't even say how many years that he's spent in jail, spending all those years in prison, spending the years in slavery and having to prove himself over and over again. But one thing that the scripture does say often in the story of Joseph is that God was with him. God was always with him, and that was the only reason that he was able to get to where he was. One of the last and final lessons that I learned through the story of Joseph is that his heart was open. His heart was open to receive his brothers. His heart was open to forgive his brothers. And his heart was open to learn the lesson that it wasn't about his brothers. It was about what God was doing through him for the sake of his family and for the sake of the surrounding areas that needed his help through the famine. Jesus is also someone that speaks about offense in the New Testament, and he speaks about how you will be tempted with offense. You will be tempted to be offended, but it's important not to stay offended. Being tempted is normal, but don't give in to temptation. I want to read to you Luke 17 from the Passion Translation. This is Luke 17, 1-4. He said to his disciples, hard trials and temptations are bound to come, but too bad for whoever brings them on. Better to wear a millstone necklace and take a swim in the deep blue ocean than to give even one of these dear little ones a hard time. Be alert. If you see your friend going wrong, correct him. If he responds, forgive him, even if it's personal against you, and repeat it 7 times through the day. And 7 times he says, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Forgive him. And that is the thing with offense. Sometimes it can be personal. Sometimes people will do things on purpose to hurt you. Sometimes things will be done, just being done, and you may feel a certain kind of way about them. But you can't stay offended. The temptation to stay offended and live in offense and stay in offense is there, and it's real, and it's normal. It's something that everybody goes through. But offense is something that can come and creep into your life and eat at you more than it will the person that has offended you. That person probably won't even know that they've done anything to offend you, but you can't live and stay in offense. And if you do, staying in offense and giving into that temptation will cause you to fall into sin. I think the last lesson that I take from the New Testament is in Matthew 18 verse 7, where Jesus is talking. He says, what sorrow awaits the world because it tempts people to sin. Temptations are inevitable, but what sorrow awaits the person who does the tempting. And the lesson in that is that we shouldn't be the person that goes out to offend people. We shouldn't be the person that hurts people on purpose, because that is tempting people to sin, and that in itself is a sin. Offense is so real, it's so sore, it's hurtful, it's something that I've dealt with so much. I still deal with it. It's actually laughable sometimes how offendable I am. But I think you need to see God's plan in it, and you need to see the hand of God in your life. And like I said, sometimes people will do things to hurt you on purpose, but God will use it for His glory and for His goodness, and to help you point people towards Him. At the end of the day, it's all about that. It's all about leading people towards God. It's all about leading people towards Jesus, so that we can live righteously and help people see the God in us. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I know that everybody deals with offense. Everybody deals with the temptation of falling into offense and staying there. But yeah, this was a great lesson to me. I hope that it helped you. I hope that it blessed you. I'd love to hear from you. Please leave your comments below. Give it a thumbs up if you liked the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel.